Sometimes late at night, when the world gets real quiet and my mind won't let me be, I find myself picturing that night. The night she came home from her trip and found the house empty. I wasn't there to see it, of course, but I know her well enough to guess how it went. She would have pulled into the driveway around midnight, dragging herself home after another one of those business trips she thought were so important. Tired, maybe a little annoyed at the flight delays, already thinking about her meetings on Monday. She probably expected to see my truck sitting there like always, parked a little crooked, mud still clinging to the tires from that dirt road by the river. Porch light on. Maybe even the kitchen light spilling out through the window if I stayed up waiting for her, like I used to. But instead, there was nothing. No truck. No lights. Just the house, sitting there dark and still under the stars. I bet she sat there for a minute, engine running, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she told herself I ran out for a gallon of milk. Or went to my brother's to watch the late game. Maybe she even smiled and shook her head, thinking, that fool forgot I was coming home tonight. But deep down, right there in her gut, she had to know. She had to feel it. That cold, sour twist in your stomach that tells you something ain't right, even before your brain can catch up. I can see her now, gathering her bags, stomping up the steps, unlocking the door with that sharp little click she always made with her tongue when the key stuck. Pushing the door open and stepping inside, expecting warmth, life, the smell of dinner long gone cold. Instead, empty air. Silence thick enough to choke on. The living room would have been the first thing she saw, and it looked the same at a glance. Couch still there. TV. Coffee table. But missing things too, if she paid attention. No boots by the door. No jacket slung over the back of the chair. No ball app hanging on the hook I always miss by a mile. Little pieces of me, gone. I imagine she dropped her bags right there in the entryway. Called out my name once, half-hearted, not wanting to sound worried. No answer. She would have walked through the living room, every step slower than the last. Into the bedroom next, where it would have hit her harder. I know she would have opened the closet, like a habit, and found it bare. No work shirts. No jeans. No muddy boots lined up in a crooked row. Just a couple of wire hangers swinging in the stillness. And then the drawers, the top one first, where I kept my watch, my pocket knife, that ratty wallet she always threatened to replace. Empty. I wonder if she thought it was a robbery at first. Some desperate hope that some stranger did this, not me. But there wouldn't be any broken windows. No mess. No signs of a struggle. Just a clean break. A goodbye without a word. I picture her standing there in the hallway, heart hammering, mouth dry as dust. Maybe she pulled out her phone, hands trembling a little, and dialed me. Straight to voicemail. Again. And again. I bet she cursed under her breath. Maybe wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her fancy coat, trying to get a grip. She always hated losing control. I imagine she called my brother next, hoping he'd say, "Oh, he's here. He just had a flat tire, left his phone at home." But instead, she got the truth. "Ain't seen him, sis. Not since last week." I wonder if she even answered when he asked, "You all right?" Or if she just hung up and stood there in that empty house, listening to the hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, the hollow ache that used to be a home. Maybe she wandered around, opening doors that led nowhere. Peeking into the bathroom to find my razor gone from the sink. Noticing the little scuff marks missing from the floors where my boots always dragged. Maybe, and I like to think this part is true, maybe she finally understood. Understood what it feels like to be left in the dark, wondering when everything you trusted slipped through your fingers. She never thought I'd do it. She never thought I had it in me. But I did. I had a long time to think while she was off doing whatever she was doing on those trips. A long time to hurt. A long time to plan. And that night, when she walked into that empty house, she got her answer. She was alone. Not just for the night. For good. Before I walked out that night, I left two things behind. A folded piece of paper. And my wedding ring. I didn't write some long letter. Wasn't no point in trying to explain things that had already been broken beyond fixing. I just folded up a short note, a few plain sentences, nothing fancy, and set it dead center on the kitchen table. I took my ring off and laid it right on top of that paper, so there was no way she could miss it. I made sure it was the first thing she'd see when she stepped into the kitchen. I didn't leave it there to be cruel. I left it because I needed her to understand, clear and final, without a word of arguing. Without one more lie passing between us. No TV buzzing in the living room. No smell of supper on the stove. Just that cold, empty kind of silence that wraps around you and squeezes the air right out of your chest. I can almost hear her boots scuffing across the floor as she made her way through the living room. But when she stepped into that kitchen and saw the table, that's when it would have hit her. There, under the tired old light that buzzed in the ceiling, was the last thing she ever expected to find. A folded note, and my wedding ring sitting on top of it. That ring had been through everything with us. 15 years of it. It was on my hand when I built the porch she always wanted. It was there when I held her hand at her mama's funeral. It was there when I fixed the washing machine for the 1000th time, swearing and sweating and laughing when it finally clunked back to life. That ring saw the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now it was sitting on the table like it didn't belong to nobody. I picture her standing there in the doorway, not moving, not breathing much either, just staring at it, like it was something dead on the front porch, something she couldn't quite make herself touch. I wonder if she even had the courage to pick it up right away, or if she just stood there, feeling the blood drain out of her face, feeling that sick, hollow punch in her gut when you know you've lost something you thought you could always get back. She didn't open the note right then, I'm sure of it. She would have been too busy staring at that ring, thinking about everything it meant, all the promises we made, all the miles we walked together, all the nights we laid under the same roof and told ourselves it was forever. She probably thought about the way I used to twist it on my finger when I was nervous, or the way she used to trace it with her thumb when we held hands at the movies. It would have sat there on the table, heavy and cold, while the walls closed in around her. And she would have realized, real slow at first, and then all at once, I wasn't coming back. Not for a night. Not for a fight. Not for anything. Gone. The kitchen probably smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. I wiped everything down before I left, even though I didn't need to. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was my way of saying goodbye to the house before I let it go. The chairs were all pushed in neat. The dishes were washed and dried. The counters were cleared. It looked like a house waiting for new owners. Not a home. I can see her moving slow, stepping closer to the table, each footstep echoing louder than the last. Maybe her hand hovered over the ring for a second before she dared to touch it. Maybe she picked it up and felt how cold it was, how empty it was. Or maybe she just sat down hard in one of those old kitchen chairs, the wood creaking under her, and stared at it like it might start explaining itself if she waited long enough. Everything she needed to know sat right there in front of her. Because deep down, she knew. She knew why I left. She just didn't expect I'd have the guts to do it first. Maybe she thought I'd stay no matter what. Maybe she thought I'd keep swallowing the lies, the late nights, the distance growing wider every week. But she was wrong. When I walked out that door, I took all my hope with me, all my patience, all my heart, and I left nothing but a note and a cold piece of gold to remind her what she threw away. By the time she shook off the shock enough to move, I was already 2 steps ahead of her. I knew her well enough to know what she'd do next. She wasn't the type to sit around and cry all night, no matter how bad it hurt. She'd get mad. She'd get cold. She'd get moving. The first thing she'd reach for was her phone, still gripped tight in her hand, still warm from all the desperate calls she made trying to find me. I figure she sat there at the kitchen table a while, staring at that folded note and the ring, before finally snapping back into motion. Pride kicking in, anger chasing after it. She probably wiped at her face with the sleeve of her fancy coat, tucked her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she was trying to pull herself together. And then she made the call. She had a lawyer's number saved. Not because she thought she'd ever need it for me. No, but because people like her always keep things tucked away for a rainy day. Just in case, she once said. Funny how fast a just in case turns into a right now. She dialed up the best shark in town, the kind of lawyer that sends Christmas cards with gold lettering and handshakes you can't trust. Told him just enough to get him moving. That her husband left. That she needed to act fast. That money and property were on the line. I bet she thought she was playing chess, lining up her moves before the board even cooled down. Thought she was still the one in control. But I'd already had my meeting months before. Sat down with a man who didn't have a gold-lettered office, but knew a whole lot more about how things really worked. He told me the truth plain and simple. Get your ducks in a row. Protect yourself before you even think about making a move. So I did. While she was out chasing new adventures, thinking she had me wrapped around her finger, I was quietly getting ready. I opened a new account in my own name, one she didn't know about. Started sliding little bits of money over, a few hundred here, a few hundred there. Nothing big enough to raise eyebrows. Nothing big enough to start a fight. And when the time finally came, when I packed up my life and walked out that door, I finished the job. Emptied the joint accounts down to the last dollar. Savings, checking, emergency fund. All of it tucked away somewhere safe where she couldn't touch it. I left just enough to keep the accounts alive, didn't want to tip off the bank by closing them flat. I wasn't being cruel. I was surviving. She just didn't know it yet. After that call to the lawyer, I imagined she grabbed her car keys fast. Maybe didn't even bother changing out of her travel clothes. Still wearing her business jacket, still smelling like airport terminals and hotel soap. She probably drove to the bank like a bat out of hell, tires squealing when she whipped into the parking lot. Stormed through those glass doors, shoulders squared, high heels clicking hard on the tile floor. She would have marched straight to the counter, demanded to see a manager. Told them she needed to check the accounts. Urgent business. Probably flashed a tight smile, the one she used when she wanted people to move faster without realizing they were being ordered around. I can see the teller typing away, her cheerful voice starting to falter when the numbers popped up on the screen. Maybe she tried to hide it, that little blink of confusion, but there was no hiding what the system said. Balance, $4.82 in checking. Balance, $0 in savings. I imagine my wife leaning over the counter, voice dropping low and sharp, demanding a second look, demanding to know where the money went. But the teller wouldn't have any answers. Just a few clicks of the mouse, a printout, and a polite little statement. The account was emptied by an authorized party yesterday. All proper procedures were followed. Authorized party. That would be me. Her hands probably trembled then, but not from fear. From pure, blinding rage. It wasn't supposed to go like this. She thought she could cry foul, play the abandoned wife card, storm into court with her hair done up nice and her voice shaking just enough to look pitiful. Thought she could grab the house, the accounts, maybe a chunk of my paycheck for the next 10 years. Instead, she found herself standing in the middle of the bank lobby, holding a paper with zeros on it. No money. No backup plan. No control. I bet she stormed out without even thanking the teller. Pushed open those heavy glass doors like they insulted her. Marched back to her car, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Sitting there behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel tight enough to leave nail marks in the leather. Breathing hard. Thinking hard. Trying to figure out how it all slipped through her fingers so fast. She thought she was the smart one. The one moving all the pieces. The one making the rules. But the truth was, by the time she picked up her phone to call that lawyer, by the time she screeched into the bank parking lot, by the time she slammed that paper with the empty balances into her purse, the game was already over. She just didn't know it yet. She didn't waste much time after the shock wore off. Didn't cry for days in the dark like some folks might have. No, not her. She got up, brushed herself off, and started moving again like she still had a plan. And truth be told, she did. Turns out, she wasn't just thinking about me when she was gone all those weekends and late nights. She already had someone else waiting in the wings. A new man. 10 years younger than her, full of that shiny confidence that only young men seem to carry before life has had a chance to really beat it out of them. The kind of fella who still thought sweet talk and wide smiles could fix anything. The kind that probably believed every line she fed him about being trapped in a loveless marriage. About how she was the poor woman married to a stubborn old fool who didn't understand her anymore. I bet she painted me as some dusty piece of furniture she'd been forced to live with. Made herself out to be some kind of brave, sad little thing who deserved better. And that young buck, well, he ate it up. He was lined up and ready to move in almost before the dust settled. Hell, he might have had his toothbrush packed before I even cleared the driveway. She played it smart, at least outwardly. Didn't make a big show of it at first. Kept up appearances for the neighbors. Still drove the same car. Still went to the same grocery store. Smiled that same old smile like everything was fine. But inside that house, our house, things were changing fast. She started clearing space. Getting rid of the things that reminded her of me. The old flannel shirts I left hanging on the hooks in the mudroom, tossed. My fishing gear in the garage, boxed up and shoved to the back corner. Family pictures that had sat on the mantel for years, quietly taken down and replaced with little bits of shiny, meaningless junk. New throw pillows, new curtains, new smells from candles burning in every room, like she could scrub the memories out of the walls with vanilla and cinnamon. I guess she figured if she could wipe out the pieces of me fast enough, it would be like I was never there at all. And pretty soon, he showed up. At first, it was casual. A car parked a little too long out front. A shadow slipping inside the front door late at night, when she thought no one was paying attention. Then it got bolder. He started spending nights. Started mowing the lawn like he owned the place. Started standing out on the porch drinking coffee in the mornings, looking like he belonged there. Like he had earned it. I heard from a friend of a friend that she introduced him as just a close friend helping out during a tough time. Said it with a laugh, like it was all harmless. Just neighbors helping neighbors. But folks around here ain't stupid. They talk. They see. And it didn't take long for the real story to trickle down to me. Meanwhile, she probably told herself she was starting fresh. That this was her chance to build a life the right way this time. That the past was something she could sweep under the rug like a mess you don't want to deal with. 5 months. That's how long it took from the day I left to the day we stood facing each other in that courtroom. She looked different when I saw her that morning. Not so much older, not exactly thinner. Just different. Like someone who had been playing at being strong for so long that the cracks were finally starting to show. Hair pulled tight, too much makeup caked on like armor. A stiff little smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was dressed for war. High heels, dark suit, papers clutched in one hand like a sword. She thought she was going to win. Thought this was just a formality before she got handed everything she thought she deserved. She had it all lined up. The story about poor her, abandoned by her cold, heartless husband. The arguments about maintaining her standard of living. The prepared tears ready to spill when she needed them most. And I just stood there in my boots and worn-out jeans, holding a plain manila folder under my arm. She smiled at me once across the room, that tight, pitying smile like she was sorry it had come to this. Like she thought she was already counting the money she was about to take home. Her lawyer looked the part too. Sharp suit, slick hair, voice like a TV anchor. I bet she paid him plenty, thinking he was the kind of guy who could polish any lie into the truth. The judge came in, stern and tired-looking, the way judges always seem to look. We all sat down, papers rustling, feet shifting on the old wood floor. Her lawyer started things off. Talked about her sacrifices. Talked about her financial needs. Talked about the way she had been blindsided and left with nothing. I didn't say a word. Just sat there calm, flipping through the folder in my lap like I was reading the morning paper. When it was my turn, my lawyer, a quiet old boy from the next county over, stood up and nodded once. Didn't even clear his throat. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady. "We have evidence to present." And that's when the real show started. First came the photos. Big, clear, color photos. Her car parked outside that motel. Her and the boy toy checking in at the front desk, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Pictures of them having dinner at the restaurant across town, the one we used to go to on anniversaries. Pictures of them kissing in the parking lot, plain as day. Her lawyer shifted in his seat. She went stiff all over, hands clenching the edge of the table. Then came the videos. Short clips. Her meeting up with him in the middle of the workday when she was supposed to be at client meetings. Her lying to my face on the front porch, telling me she was headed to a late meeting while he sat waiting around the corner. Every lie, every betrayal, caught in the light of that courtroom. Finally, the GPS tracking logs. Clean, neat reports showing every detour she took during those business trips. Every overnight stay that didn't match her travel receipts. The judge didn't say much during the presentation. Didn't have to. His face said it all. I didn't look over at her. Didn't have to. I could feel the air leaking out of her like a popped balloon. All those months she spent building her case, thinking she'd paint me as the bad guy gone, turned to dust right there under the weight of the truth. When it was all done, my lawyer sat back down, hands folded easy on the table, like a man who just finished a good meal and didn't need dessert. The judge shuffled the papers in front of him, glanced at the pile of evidence stacked high on our side, and made his decision. No alimony. No payout. No sympathy. Just a short, clipped ruling granting the divorce and dividing the few leftover scraps as fair as could be under the circumstances. She sat there blinking like she'd just been slapped. That tight little smile was long gone now, replaced by the hollow look of someone who realized the whole game had been lost and there was no one left to blame. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something to her, but she just stared straight ahead. For a long moment after it was over, we all just sat there in the stale courtroom air, papers and pins and broken dreams scattered across the tables. I stood up slow, tucked the manila folder under my arm, and gave her one last look. Not angry, not gloating, just tired. She had made her choices, and she was finally standing knee-deep in the wreckage she built. I tipped my hat to the judge, habit more than anything, and walked out into the sharp sunlight. Outside, the day was bright and clear. The kind of day where the sky feels too big, too blue, like it's daring you to start over. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was dragging 1,000 pounds behind me. I felt free. She, on the other hand, was still sitting back there in that little room, surrounded by the ruins of her own lies. And as I climbed into my truck and pulled away, I didn't look back once. The ink wasn't even dry on the divorce papers when I made my next move. Soon as the judge's gavel hit the desk and the signatures were set, I didn't waste a minute. I had the for sale sign in the back of my truck, ready to plant right out front. Didn't even bother with a fancy real estate agent or open houses. I sold it quick, cash buyer, no inspections, no fixing the leaky sink or repainting the living room. Take it as it is, I said. I didn't care about squeezing a few extra thousand out of it. I just wanted it gone. That house had been a good place once. Walls full of laughter, Sunday dinners, long summers spent fixing up the porch or planting flowers she picked out. But all that was gone now. Every floorboard, every window, every spot where we used to dance or argue or dream. It all felt rotten under my boots. I didn't want to stay 1 second longer than I had to. While the paperwork pushed through, I packed what little I had left. Not much, really. A couple of boxes of old photos, the tools from the garage that hadn't rusted yet, my father's rifle, and a few worn-out shirts she never thought to toss. The rest, the furniture, the curtains, the plates we picked out when we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, I left behind. Let the new owners decide what was worth keeping. I moved fast. Didn't tell a soul where I was going. No long goodbyes. No last looks over my shoulder. I found a little place 2 counties over, small, quiet, nothing fancy. Paid 6 months' rent in cash and didn't leave a forwarding address. I wanted a clean break. No letters in the mailbox with her handwriting. No chance of seeing her face in the grocery store. No chance of her showing up, standing on my porch, trying to dig up what was already buried. Silence. That's what I was after. And I found it. Meanwhile, back at the old place, she was finding out that the future she had counted on wasn't as shiny as she thought. Her young man, the one she thought was going to stick it out with her and play house? Well, turns out he wasn't too keen on the idea of staying around once the drama started costing real money. The mortgage payments, the taxes, the maintenance, it all started piling up fast. I heard from a buddy who heard from another buddy that it didn't take long before that boy started getting distant. Started finding reasons not to spend the night. Started talking about needing space and time to think. He hadn't signed up for all the baggage. He hadn't signed up for the angry calls from bill collectors or the awkward stares from neighbors who remembered a different story. He liked the good times. The laughs, the promises, the sweet little lies that tasted good in the moment. But when the music stopped and the lights came up, he didn't want to stick around and sweep up the mess. I don't know exactly when he left. Don't much care, either. I imagine one day she came home from work, wearing that tight smile again, carrying grocery bags she bought with a credit card about to snap, and found his side of the closet empty too. Maybe he left a note. Maybe he didn't. Doesn't matter. All that matters is he left the same way I did. Quiet. Final. By the time she realized she was standing alone in that house full of broken promises, I was long gone, living my days without hearing her voice, waking up without that dull, dragging weight in my chest, breathing air that didn't feel like it was laced with old fights and fresh lies. Sometimes I sat out on my tiny porch at the new place, drinking bad coffee out of a chipped mug, watching the sun set behind the trees. Sometimes I thought about what might have been if things had gone different. If she had chosen me instead of chasing something new every time life got hard. If she had remembered what we promised each other all those years ago. But most of the time, I didn't think about her at all. Most of the time, I just listened to the crickets, watched the stars blink into life, and let the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. She made her choices, and I made mine. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was right where I was supposed to be. It was a quiet afternoon when she showed up. I was sitting out on the front porch, an old dog-eared book in my lap, coffee gone cold beside me, when I saw a dust cloud coming down the dirt road. Didn't think much of it at first. Could have been a delivery truck or the neighbor's cousin dropping by. But when that familiar silver sedan pulled up, my stomach tightened. She stepped out of the car like a ghost. Hair a little messier than she used to keep it. Face thinner. Eyes tired, like maybe she hadn't been sleeping much. She stood there for a second, one hand still on the car door, like she wasn't sure if she should walk up or drive off. I didn't move. Just sat there, flipping the corner of the book I wasn't reading. Finally, she shut the door and walked up the little gravel path. Didn't say hello. Didn't ask if I had a minute. Just marched up the steps and stood there, hands balled into fists at her sides. "Why?" she said, voice low, cracking. "Why'd you leave like that? Why didn't you fight for us?" I looked at her a long moment, saw the hurt, the anger, the desperation all tangled up in her face. I set the book down slow, leaned forward in my chair, hands hanging loose between my knees. "You really want the truth?" I asked. She nodded, quick and sharp, like she thought she was ready. So I gave it to her. Started with the motel key card. Found it wedged down between the seat and the center console, I said. Figured maybe it was nothing at first. Told myself you probably picked it up by accident. Her face twitched, just a little. She didn't say a word. Then there were the pills, I went on. Little blister pack tucked in the glove box. Not the kind you carried when we were together. Not the kind you needed for anything we planned. She swallowed hard, arms crossing tight over her chest. "I put a tracker on your car after that," I said. Not proud of it. But I had to know. Had to see it with my own eyes. I told her about the nights she said she was working late but parked outside some motel 2 towns over. Told her about the pictures my brother helped me take, the ones where she was all smiles, holding hands with a man who looked barely old enough to rent a car. Told her how every mile she drove, every lie she told, built the case stronger and stronger until I couldn't deny it anymore. She shifted on her feet, the porch boards creaking under her weight. "You don't know what it was like," she whispered. "You don't know how lonely I was." I ignored that. "You were lonely," I said flatly. "And instead of talking to me, instead of working it out, you chose the easy way out. Chose a quick thrill." Her eyes flashed at that, but she bit her lip and said nothing. I leaned back in the chair, with groaning under the weight. "While you were busy finding ways to fill up your empty spaces," I said, "I was busy too." I told her about the meetings with my lawyer, the careful planning, the slow transfer of money into a private account she didn't know about. Told her how I started moving little things out of the house when she wasn't looking, my tools, my keepsakes, the things that mattered, piece by piece, week by week. While she thought she was the one pulling the wool over my eyes, I was setting myself free without her ever seeing it coming. She stood there, breathing hard, blinking fast like she was trying to hold back tears. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I'd done my crying in the dark months ago. I stood up slow, the porch boards groaning again, and walked to the rail. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," I said, voice low. "I left because I finally realized you stopped loving me." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. No words strong enough to plug the hole she'd torn open. We stood there a long moment in the quiet, the only sound the soft rustling of the trees in the breeze. Finally, she looked down at the boards between her feet. "I made mistakes," she said, voice so small I almost didn't catch it. "I know," I said. "And now you get to live with them." She turned without another word, walked down the steps, and got back into her car. The gravel crunched under her tires as she backed up, turned around, and drove off down the road, the dust swallowing her whole. I watched until she was nothing but a faint blur on the horizon. Then I sat back down in my chair, picked up my book, and turned the page. The day went on. The world kept turning, and I stayed right where I belonged, far away from the wreckage she left behind. It was a few days after she showed up the first time when she came back again. Same car, same dust cloud kicking up behind her, same heavy look hanging off her shoulders like a wet coat. I was out back this time, fixing a busted fence post when I heard the car door slam. Didn't rush to meet her. Didn't rush at all. By the time I came around to the front yard, she was standing there on the porch, arms crossed tight, face pale and drawn like she hadn't eaten in days. She didn't yell, didn't cry, just stood there, quiet as a grave. "I cheated," she said finally, voice barely more than a whisper. "I know," I said, just as plain. She blinked at that, like maybe she thought I'd still be surprised, still be hurt. But there was nothing left in me to break. She looked down at the ground for a second, kicking at the dust with the toe of her shoe. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "I was lonely. The marriage, it drained me. It felt like we were just going through the motions, like the love had turned cold." I let her talk. Didn't interrupt. Didn't nod or shake my head. Just listened. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, like the truth was colder than the fall wind blowing through the yard. "I needed to feel something again," she said. "I needed to feel alive." When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were full of tears she wasn't bothering to wipe away. She was expecting something, forgiveness maybe. An argument. A plea. but all I gave her was the truth. I stepped up onto the first step of the porch, looked her square in the eyes, and said, "Now you know what a thrill looks like." Her mouth fell open like she wanted to answer. Maybe tell me it wasn't worth it. Maybe tell me she regretted it. But she didn't. Because there was nothing left to say. I stood there a moment longer, feeling the weight of the years between us settle heavy in the cool evening air. Then I said it, calm and steady. "Go." She flinched like I'd hit her. But she didn't argue. Didn't beg. She just turned, slow and stiff, and walked back to her car. The door creaked open. The engine coughed to life. And without another word, without another look back, she drove away. I watched her tail lights disappear down the dirt road until there was nothing left but the whisper of gravel settling back into place. Silence. The kind of deep, clean silence that only comes after a storm has blown itself out and left nothing standing. I stood there a while longer, breathing in the cold, empty air, listening to the quiet creak of the old porch boards under my boots, watching the last of the daylight bleed out over the trees. She was gone. Not the way she expected. Not the way she planned. She left with nothing. No house. No money. No lover waiting to catch her. Just a battered heart and 1,000 miles of bad choices behind her. And me? I was finally free. Free to live the rest of my life without the weight of her lies dragging behind me. Free to breathe, to build, to hope again, even if it took a while. I didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. I just went back to fixing that fence post, my hands steady, my heart finally quiet for the first time in years. The world kept turning. And this time, it turned without her. Share your thoughts in the comments. Did the husband's way of handling the situation seem cold, smart, or something else? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.